It's the On Stage podcast with Chris Robert. Let me see. Lucas Cantor. Yeah, you told me you actually. Yeah, so you're a musical artist, a composer, producer, and multi-instrumentalist and speaker.
Yes.
And you work for the NBC's music department. Wow.
They are a client of mine, yeah.
Olympic Games since 2002. And you won 2 Emmys. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Can you give us a little bit of background to people who don't know who Lucas Cantor is? Give us a little bit of history.
Sure. Lucas Cantor Santiago is my full name, so that's what I go by professionally. And yeah, NBC is a client of mine. I've done work for them for the Olympics since 2002. I was an intern in 2002, and now I do some work in the music department. And I'm primarily a composer. I do a lot of music for film and television. And I do a lot of work for some network sports departments. So a lot of my music you can hear when you watch football, and some of it when you watch baseball. And so that's what I'm working on now. I just finished a show with 2 other composers. We sort of teamed up on it. One of them is my wife, Allison Cantor, and then the other one is a great composer in Florida named Eddie Lan. And we did a show on Pantaya, which is the biggest streaming network for Spanish language content in the US. The show is called La Rebelión. It's in Spanish. So if you're watching this podcast in English, maybe this isn't a show for you, but if you're bilingual and you speak Spanish, the show's called La Rebelión. There's some great Mexican-American actors in it, and there's really great music in it. And that'll be out, I think that'll be out in a few weeks, but I actually have no idea. We're finished with it, so they're still doing their mixes and their dubs and whatever they have to do, and it'll come out to stream, on whatever schedule they have. And I'm working on a book about the history of music and technology over the last 42,000 years. And that is due out from Diversion Books. At the moment, it's due out in next October-ish of 2023, but I'm not quite finished with it yet, so we may end up pushing that back. As I mentioned, it's called The Music Code. It'll be out with Diversion Books. It's going to be really good, and I am right now, just for your listeners, anyone who's involved in a long-term and intense creative project, I'm at the point where I'm starting to feel like it might come together, but I have basically all summer been thinking there's no way I'm ever going to finish this book. And now I feel like I'm going to finish it. It's going to be okay. So that's exciting.
Whatever made you want to be a composer, producer, multi-instrumentalist, and speaker? I mean, is acting in there somewhere?
No, I don't. I have not. I have acted in plays and stuff. I think any professional, creative showbiz person finds themselves on stage doing things. But I wouldn't say that I'm an actor. And yeah, what made me want to be I don't know, what makes anybody want to do anything?
Well, you must have actually thought when you were 6 or 7 or 8 that, like most artists and most musicians I've interviewed said that when I was 7, I picked up a guitar, or when I was 10, I found this piano in a store, started playing, and I thought this is what I wanted to do.
I never had that moment. I was 14 when I started playing guitar seriously, and it just interested me, and I kept on going with it. And I realized when I was about to go to college that anything that I wanted to study, I knew I wanted to do something more or less in the arts. So at least, I wasn't going to be a doctor or something where you have to really go to dedicated schooling. And so I realized that it didn't really matter what I majored in, and what people cared about was that you had gone to school for 4 years, and they didn't really care what you went to school for. So I initially went for English, and then I thought, why not change my major to music? And that's what I did. So I became a jazz performance major, switched schools, and went to SUNY Purchase in New York, and learned to play jazz standards on the guitar. And that's what my degree is in. And then afterwards, I ended up working in television. So the two things are not related at all, but that's what I did. Just a series of dumb luck. Met some interesting people who wanted me to work in production with them, and my dad is a filmmaker, so I had some experience on set. And what I used to joke with people that the only thing you really need to be on a set is the ability to shut up and stay out of the way. And so, if you're not working there. So I think I actually did pretty well just by getting around some of these productions and knowing how to just sort of stand in the background and be helpful when needed, but just be invisible when the people who are really making the production were working.
So tell me about you co-produced Lorde's cover of "Everybody Wants to Rule the World" on the Hunger Games. Did Catch a Fire soundtrack? Did you ever meet Lorde herself?
Nope, never met her. This was in 2013, and one of the interesting things about that was, during the pandemic in 2020, when everybody started the podcast and started collaborating remotely, there were all these articles written about how musicians are now able to collaborate over the magic of the internet. And, but we had been doing this for years. I mean, a decade at that point, really. And the way that I did this song with Lorde was a client from BMG called me up, and I was working at the time for another composer named Michael A. Levine, who's a great composer, a great guy, was a mentor of mine. And the honest story is that this client didn't think I was qualified enough to do this song, and he asked if I could team up with someone who had some more credentials. And Michael was game, and so we did it together. And Michael did a lot of the heavy lifting. But I, it really was a collaboration. But so we made this track, and the way that you do something like this is, it was for a trailer, and, so you make the track and you get a demo singer, and then you have the artist sing on it later. But when they called us, this was summer of 2013. And so the client just said, we've got this singer from New Zealand. She's pretty good. She's starting to make some waves, but, Lorde was not a superstar at this point. She was just an artist on BMG's roster. And so we did this cover. We sent it to her wherever she was in the world, probably New Zealand. Maybe she was on tour. She sang it wherever she sang it, and her engineer turned it over to us. And, it was amazing. Her performance on it is really out of this world. And so we did that. We finished it. We mixed it. We mastered it. We sent it to the client. He sent it to whoever had requested it, the ultimate client, which was a trailer for a film, and they didn't like it. So, yeah. So this is totally normal. This happens, every time you do a spec demo for a trailer, you win 1 out of 10 if you're really, really good, so it was no big deal. And Lorde, like I said, at the time was not a big artist. I had no idea who she was. Nobody, she was just starting to gain some traction, but she wasn't the superstar that she would later become. So then flash forward, this was about July, and then flash forward 4 months later, Lorde has now won Album of the Year and every other Grammy that year. I mean, she just destroyed the Grammys that year. She's the hottest artist on the planet. And Hunger Games has slated a song of hers to be on their soundtrack. And then Lorde performs this song at a concert. Somebody at the concert videotapes it and puts it on YouTube. So now this song is no longer a world premiere, and the Hunger Games doesn't want it anymore. The only thing that Lorde had recorded in the studio that nobody had ever heard was the song that we did, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. And that's why it ended up on the Hunger Games soundtrack. She had no time to record anything. She was on tour. Every minute of her time was booked because she had become just this mega star overnight. And so the only thing she had that was a world premiere was our cover of Everybody Wants to Rule the World that had been rejected by a trailer. So that's what ended up going on the soundtrack. So it went on the Hunger Games soundtrack. It went in at least 3 theatrical trailers, maybe more. I still get it on briefs for trailers. People will still say we want something like this, and they might not even know that I did it. So it became a huge hit. And just dumb luck. I think we did a nice job on the song, but really the fact that Lorde is such an amazing and well-known artist is what sells it.
Can you tell us about the Major League Soccer by Dan Martinez?
Well, Dan Martinez is, he's a collaborator of mine. Dan and I are good friends. We go way back to when we first sort of got our start in Los Angeles. We both moved here around the same time and had some mutual friends. And Dan is just do you ever have any people in your life who are like annoyingly good at something?
Yeah, actually, I do.
Yeah, well, Dan's one of those people. He's an annoyingly good musician, and he's a fantastic pianist. He's a great arranger. He's a great composer. He's a great orchestrator, and I've employed him in all of these capacities, and he's always just really great. And our relationship started out with me sort of hiring him for little jobs, and now it's progressed to he's he's a great composer, and we just collaborate on whatever we do. We do it 50-50 together, and so I had been hired by Fox to do a theme song for a different sport, and this was in 2020. And so I brought Dan on to collaborate because it just is he's just the right person for that. He knows how to write music with bravado and intensity, and that's what they needed. And so I thought he would be a great partner for this. So we wrote a bunch of demos for them, and they liked all of them. And then because it was 2020, the sport got canceled. So this was one of the demos that we had done that they really liked, but they didn't really have a home for it. And then Major League Soccer, they started a Major League Soccer contract that year, and the producer of Major League Soccer just happened to hear this demo. I think my contact at Fox probably put it in front of them, and they loved it, and they wanted to use it for soccer. So there were originally some sounds from a different sport in it that we had to take out and replace with soccer ball sounding songs, but basically that was the only thing we had to do, and they like it. And it was, it was really great. It's a good piece of music. We worked with, an EDM producer cause it has some electronic elements to get those exactly right. And it's great. It makes me like I've become a soccer fan since that theme went on the air, because I just, obviously the first time it went on, I wanted to watch it. And then I just kind of got sucked into the action of the game, and now I'm a soccer fan. I can't decide if I want to be an LAFC fan or a Galaxy fan. I'm leaning towards Galaxy, even though they're a little further away from me. I just, I like an old school team.
But I noticed you did a TED Talk. Yeah, so artificial intelligence. Now,
if you ever converse with an AI, what you can do, you can download any number of apps that have like an AI friend, and they're pretty convincing. They're just chatbots, but they're pretty convincing. And the way that they get you to believe that they're human is by admitting that they're not human and asking for your sympathy as they're learning how to talk. And that has the psychological effect of, if a child comes up to you and asks for help, basically any human being is going to try to help them. And this is the effect that these AIs elicit in human. This is their strategy. Is they'll say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I might have answered with some nonsense, but I'm sorry. I'm still learning." And it gives you this feeling of, "Oh, okay, let me try and help this thing out." But what an AI is ultimately, it is an Excel spreadsheet. That's what it is. It can look up stuff really fast. And so instead of, that is for anyone who's an AI scientist or even has a passing interest in AI, that is an oversimplification, and I will completely own that oversimplification, but I don't think it's wrong. It is it's essentially a computer program that is able to check a very large amount of data and compare a very large amount of data very quickly. And so it can do things that mimic intelligence, right? It can do things that we previously thought were only doable by humans. But that doesn't, I don't know if that makes it intelligent. And it's also an open question if intelligence is computable. And that is a yes, no question, right? Either intelligence is computable, and therefore we can create a computer that will be as intelligent as a human, or intelligent is not computable, and any amount of processing power we throw at a computer is not going to make it intelligent. So that question has not been answered, and you can find very, very smart people on either side of that debate. And by very smart, I mean like the smartest people in the world being on either side of that debate. Daniel Dennett seems to come down on the idea that intelligence may or may not be computable. The idea that intelligence is computable may not or may not be knowable, but computers will be able to behave intelligently to a degree that will make them indistinguishable from human intelligence. And I think, and if Professor Dennett is listening, I hope I summed up your, argument on this well. Maybe I didn't, but that seems to me to be the most relevant argument, that you may or may not ever have a machine that can have feelings and intelligence the way that we the way that we consider, the way that we expect intelligence to be. What am I trying to say? You may or may not be able to make, or you can probably make a machine that will mimic intelligence, but what is the difference between perfectly mimicking intelligence and being intelligent? There is really no way for the observer to know the difference. So like, I can't know as I'm talking to you what feelings you're having. I assume you're having the feelings that you are emoting with your face and explaining with your voice. I have no way of knowing if you're having different feelings underneath that. And it doesn't really matter for the context of this conversation.
No, because you're teaching me a lot about this, because I never heard anybody explain it like that.
So, I mean, it's not insignificant that a computer is able to do it. It's an accomplishment, and it was a technical problem that some very smart computer scientists solved, but it's unclear if it has any like serious implications for society.
How far can it go, though? I mean, AI can do wonderful works of art. Like how far can AI go? And when it comes to music, obviously, what if the Who decided, okay, well, we're going to put John Entwistle in there, and John Entwistle died, I don't know how many years ago, but now you can see the Who with John Entwistle, or now you can see the Rolling Stones, and they decided that they're going to get the original drummer or whatever. Oh, let's put Charlie Watts in there. You know, people will think they're watching actually Charlie Watts. Hey, look, Charlie Watts is drumming again. Or hey, let's see and hear Buddy Rich playing the drums again.
Well, you're jumping several steps down a road that is unclear whether or not this road exists. You know, like, so, oh no, I mean, I do know, you don't know. Like, I mean, I don't claim to know everything about artificial intelligence, but what I'm spotting is that you're making some pretty big leaps of logic that the media does encourage you to make because it's really good copy, but it's not, artificial intelligence is not at the point where it is recreating deceased humans. It is not clear that is even possible to do. It is certainly possible to do it at a parlor trick level where you can make a hologram that looks like Michael Jackson and make it sing some recorded Michael Jackson songs. And that is cool, and it's amazing, and it's emotional, but it's not Michael Jackson standing in front of you. And the idea that you could have hologram Buddy Rich playing music, you know, I mean, I'd love to see that Buddy Rich, Lionel Hampton, Art Tatum trio playing, you know, in hologram form. And maybe someone could someday do that, but they're not going to be able to make them improvise. You're not going to, or maybe they will, but it won't be them. It'll be a computer. You know, like Buddy Rich is dead. And when I did my Schubert project, Schubert is also dead. Like, Schubert is never going to finish the unfinished symphony because he already didn't do it. And now he's dead. So
what do you think Schubert's been doing the last 200 years? Decomposing.
Exactly. Yes. He spent 18 years composing, and he spent the last 200 years decomposing. So yeah, but yeah, there's, you know, it's easy to go down this rabbit hole of, well, if AI can play chess, what's to stop it from becoming the president of the United States? And the answer is there are a lot of things. For example, you know, I mean, in the case of the president of the United States, there's a lot of things stopping a lot of people from becoming president of the United States. And an AI would face those same obstacles.
So have you seen the movie Surrogates with Bruce Willis?
Yes.
What do you think of that? You think that something like that is a possibility?
Yeah, I love that movie. So that was a movie that, so interesting that you brought that up. I thought of all the sci-fi movies I've ever seen, that was the one that had the best first two acts and then just kind of fell apart for me. The premise of it is, and I think it's based on a Philip K. Dick book or someone like that. It's based on a book, I think. And yeah, for your listeners who haven't seen it, the premise is simply that there are like androids, or they're not androids. They're basically humans don't go outside anymore. They interact through like human looking robots that you don't know until halfway through the movie aren't the actual humans, but the actual humans are at home just controlling them. And it's like considered a faux pas in this society to go out in the flesh in person. And it's an interesting, you know, we're almost there in some ways with just social media where like people interact and have meaningful conversations and meaningful relationships via social media with people that they've never actually met in the flesh. I mentioned earlier that I scored a show with my wife and another great composer named Eddie Lan. Eddie Lan and I, that's Edylan, Eddie Lan and I have never met in person. We connected through, I think I just reached out to him because I heard a score that he did and I really liked it. And we've met over Zoom because we met during the pandemic, and we've spoken, through technology, but we've never actually been in the same room together. So this is sort of a light version of the relationships that you'd have in surrogates. And it is not a stretch to think that we would be able to get to that world. I mean, this is the universe that Mark Zuckerberg is trying to create with Meta, that, we meet virtually. And the next step beyond that, maybe would be that we meet in person, but through virtual drones.
Like in the Kingsman, like they did.
Yeah, I don't know if I know exactly what you're referring to.
Kingsman? With Michael Caine, where Kingsman is like sort of like an MI5 type group.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to explain. Have you ever? I guess you never seen the movie.
Yeah, is Michael Caine in Kingsman?
Yeah, Michael Caine is in the Kingsman, and they're when they're doing a meeting, they're sitting around this table,
Mm-hmm.
and each person who's sitting down is in a different country, and it's a virtual meeting.
Sure. Well, that's we're doing that right now. I mean, I don't know where you are in the world, but here we are. You're in Toronto, Canada? All right. But I mean, I'm in Los Angeles, but we're having a virtual meeting right now.
AI can't be perfect.
I don't know. I think it can be perfect. I think that's actually part of the problem, is that it doesn't, creativity is not perfect. So, the best creative decisions usually happen by accident, in my experience anyway. And then because I have some experience and some craft, I'm able to take those mistakes and turn them into art. But a lot of what I do happens by accident. So I don't know if that has anything to do with AI or whether or not AI can be perfect.
I think we're going far and beyond music.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. When someone talks about AI, I'm all over the place. I love it.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think what you were sort of getting at a little bit of stoner philosophy of like, how do I know that this is all happening right now? Because if it was happening 7 seconds ago, but it was just delayed for me, how would I ever know? And, this is the same as the discussion of like, how do I know that when you look at the color red, that you're seeing the same color that I'm seeing? Because, if you like whatever, if you saw yellow where I saw red, we would never know because you would always call it red. But, the answer is that those are physical objects, and red is a certain wavelength of light, and we could actually measure. I can't understand your perception. Like, you might see red and see what I see as yellow, but that I don't know if that matters. As long as we have a basis, and the idea that I'm several seconds behind you is just a function of how fast fiber optic cable can work. I mean, there is some latency between us because we are a not insignificant distance away, even accounting for the speed of light, which is not, our signal doesn't travel exactly at the speed of light because it gets slowed down by transistors along the way, et cetera, and, has to get converted from, say like your computer. So the signal that we're communicating through now, in the most simplistic possible form, is going from, the light bouncing off of your face, going into your camera, going into your computer, projecting to your Wi-Fi router. Then it goes to your Wi-Fi router and it goes into a hard, probably like cable, like a copper cable. And then that goes to probably some light pipe, some fiber optic cable, which travels, let's say, to a data center where StreamYard is hosted. And then from that data center, it goes out some light pipe into a cable, into my router, through my Wi-Fi, and then onto my screen. So while all of those things happen at the speed of light, all of those junctures, all of those connections, all of those servers that it has to hit add a little bit of latency. And so, you're right that I'm probably moving just a few milliseconds behind from your perspective where I am now, but that doesn't affect conversation. If it was much more than a second or so, it would be hard because you would talk and then you wouldn't hear my response for what seemed like a little bit too long.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how you know that we're like having the same time.
I'm actually so happy I was able to talk to you because you're so easy to talk to, and Thanks. So you said that you composed music for the Netflix anime Cannon Busters.
I did. Yeah, that was a fun one. It's an anime, so if you like anime, it's on Netflix, and you'll probably like it. And it was a interesting experience. I was in a studio at the time. I rented a studio in a building with a bunch of other studios, and one of my studio neighbors got this show and was just a little bit overwhelmed by it, I think. And they had never done television, and they didn't really know what to do. So I partnered with them, and I said, look, I'll do half the work, but I want to be listed as a composer, because this is a little bit more than an additional music credit, because in addition to writing some music, it seems like you need me to run the show, because they just didn't really know how to do it. They'd never done it before. And writing music for a television show is a pretty specific skill that you really need to know how to do it. So we wrote, it was interesting. Usually when you do a television show, usually they send you the show, and the director or producer will explain to you the kind of music that they want in the show, and then you'll write it. It's called a spotting session. You sit down and you watch an episode together, and they say, at this time code, music comes in, it should sound like this. At this time code, it should end. And that's how TV usually works. What we did for Cannon Busters was they just wanted us to write a bunch of music, and then they would put it in and animate to it. And so it was a different experience. And for me, I came up, as I said, doing jazz and writing music for music's sake and not music for picture. So it was actually fun for me to be able to just write a cool track and then have someone else figure out how it fits into a story. That was Cannon Busters. We made, 75 2 to 3 minute pieces of music, and they added them they just put them in the show where they felt like putting them in. It's pretty cool. There's an album on Spotify too, which you can check out. And I think my favorite track that I did for that show is called Car Chase. And it's just like a 70s style funk track that I wrote, and I played every instrument except for the horns and the drums. I hired a great drummer named Jake Reed, who is just this awesome drummer in Los Angeles. And I use a friend named Nick Myers in New York, who contracts horns for me out there. And so they're able to do like a virtual horn session. And so, yeah, it sounds really good. And me and everyone on that track have been playing together for years, had played together for years in person, but we now are collaborating almost entirely virtually.
We're talking about Schubert's, and I want to ask you, like the Eighth Symphony, you actually finished the unfinished symphony with the help of AI, and then you had a full symphony premiered at London. Like, it's only the AI finished it, but if you put it through the AI again, would it come up with a different ending for it?
Yes.
I thought AIs remembered what they did originally.
It might. I'm sorry. I'm being that's a specific enough question that I'm not sure how to answer it. But yeah, it would. But it's not the AI didn't finish the symphony the way
We added to it.
No, that's not the right thing to say. What does it mean to finish a symphony?
I suppose that Schubert was writing the Eighth Symphony and then he died before he was able to finish it. Is that what it means?
That would be what everybody assumes. That is not the case. I mean, the one reason that we know that's not the case is that there's a Ninth Symphony that he wrote. So he wrote that one after. He just abandoned the Eighth Symphony. He didn't. He wrote 2 movements of it, and he sketched a 3rd movement, and they were all in triple meter, which was not common for a symphony at that time, and maybe not even acceptable for a symphony at that time. And Schubert was so prolific that it was totally normal for him to abandon works. He would write music every day. He wouldn't remember the music that he wrote 2 days ago. He wrote more music in 18 years than J.S. Bach wrote in 50 years. And so the idea that he would abandon a piece of music is totally normal. And the Eighth Symphony is not the only piece that he abandoned. He has many sort of half-finished pieces of music. And he, so the idea of AI, the headline, AI finishes Schubert's unfinished symphony, is irresistible, right? And what people think when they think of a AI finishing a symphony is, I think what they think is, I think what they're thinking of is audio. You know, they think like, okay, this symphony sounds this way, and AI figured out how to make sounds that are sort of congruent with the sounds that came before, and that will make a symphony make sense. But many people don't know, unless you're a professional musician, what a symphony is. I mean, a symphony, first of all, exists on paper before it exists in the hands of any musicians or in the ears of an audience. And it has to exist on paper before it can do that. And it has to exist on paper in a very, very specific way. So a way that no computer can yet create autonomously. There are computers that can create musical notation. There are not yet computers that can create full-scale musical notation that is printable and copyable and playable by an orchestra in a way that is as meaningful and detailed as a human. Maybe someone's working on that. I cannot imagine why they would be working on it, because I don't know what the applications would be or what problem it would solve. But maybe someone's working on that and they can do it. But they have not, to my knowledge, they can't do it yet. So in order to finish a symphony, you know, a symphony is just such a vast, specific, and dense collection of ideas that when we did this project, the AI was able to generate some of those ideas. And I, as a human composer, had to fill in the rest of them. So the AI generated a lot of melodies, like what you think of as a theme for a symphony, you know, like da, 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 that's a theme, right? So that's a theme, but that's also just 4 notes. And that information doesn't really tell you anything as a musician about how to play the symphony. It tells you as a listener how to identify the symphony, but it doesn't tell you as a musician, you know, I mean, me just singing that, you know that I'm singing Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, but, you know, you probably don't know that figure occurs in the French horns and also in the violins and also in the basses at different times, you know, and the art of, or I would say the craft of Beethoven is moving that theme around in a way that is interesting and pleasing. You know, the theme itself is not, you know, I mean, people might disagree with me, but the theme itself is not that compelling. It's memorable, but it's really like almost an exercise in making something that isn't that interesting into something that is very interesting. And so all of these arts are things that go into making a symphony, and AI can only do some of them. Maybe there are different AIs that can do all of them, but this is really gets at the heart of what intelligence is that synthesizing all of these different things and making them into one piece of art, I think, is what we consider to be intelligence. You know, like a computer that can play chess, for example, which it already can and has for decades been able to play chess better than human masters, is a fantastic technical achievement. But that's not, you know, you're not going to have that computer over for a dinner party because all it can do is play chess. Or a computer that can write music in the style of Amy Winehouse is an interesting achievement, you know, but it doesn't do anything else. It's very narrow. And it seems that the leap between being able to do a task and being able to do many tasks and have intelligence is a small leap, but it's actually a Grand Canyon. And it's unclear whether that leap is even doable. It might be, but it also might not be. So, you know, time will tell. I don't think it is. That's my opinion. My opinion is that I don't think that we can make a machine that has intelligence that if we were to probe it deeply, we would find it to be satisfactorily intelligent. I think we can make a machine that can perform many intelligent tasks very, very well and probably better than a human. But I don't know if we can, like, I think we can probably make a robot that does surgery better than a surgeon. And I think we can probably, I mean, AIs already exist that can generate music way faster than I can. You know, that doesn't, I don't think that makes them intelligent though. It just makes them really good at a task.
Well, then you have an AI that creates a song and becomes a hit. Who wrote the song? A song called Falling by AI Machine? Would they come up with a name for that song? Would they just, people were like,
well,
so this
again,
song...
Chris, you're making a lot of assumptions. Like a song becoming a hit, it doesn't just happen. So like you don't write a song and then it just becomes a hit because you're lucky.
No,
you
but
know?
if an AI wrote a song and becomes a hit, people are going to want to know, hey, who's the artist that wrote the
Well, I mean,
song?
but that is like saying if I walk out of my room and fly away, that is going to upend our understanding of physics. And yes, that's true, but it's unlikely for that to happen. So like an AI, what I'm trying to say is that a hit doesn't just happen. So like it's not like an AI can just write a song and then it'll become a hit. A hit is not like a hit song is not something that happens by accident. That is the narrative that the public is. I don't want to say fed because that sounds nefarious, but that is, what we do as artists and what we've done for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years, is to proliferate this myth of lone genius, and that what we do is sit in our rooms and just create amazing, beautiful things, and then we put them out into the world, and people find them and decide that they love them. And that is not how art has ever worked, and it is not how art works today. What happens is that someone like Christina Aguilera, great example, is a human being, right? She is a human person, but when you and I say the phonemes Christina Aguilera, we are referring to a company. We're referring to a brand. We're referring to a huge team of incredibly talented people who are working in concert to create an experience for a consumer. So, Christina Aguilera does not write a song on a guitar and then just put it out on Spotify and everybody loves it. At this point, she probably could do that, but because she's been so famous for so long. But the a hit song is a team. It's a marketing effort, and often the marketing cost of a hit song or a hit movie is 3 times the cost of producing that song or that movie. And so like an AI, and the other thing is that there's no such thing as, when you have a hit song, if I were to ask you, like, what was the last thing you listened to? Like, what was the last music you listened to?
Imagine Dragons.
Great. That's not the question I asked you. I asked you what you listened to. You told me who you listened to.
Okay.
But no, I don't actually need to know. My point is that this is how these things are anchored in our minds, right? They're anchored as Christina Aguilera, but there is a blank category for AI artist. So there's no reason for you to listen to an AI artist unless there was a huge marketing push behind said AI artist, right? So
what if Christina Aguilera or even Britney Spears says, hey, that's an interesting song by, you mean to tell me that Amy Winehouse was done by an AI and that wasn't actually her voice? Wow. So why don't I do a full album, Britney says, of just AI? We'll just put in my voice and see what it comes up with. And it comes up with these 10 great songs. And Britney's like, wow, that's great. And then let's release it. And then people are thinking, oh, Britney Spears sang the song Falling Away. No, the AI did in Britney Spears' voice.
You're again, this is a lot of assumptions. So the AI being able to perform it in Britney Spears' voice is a completely different thing than being able to write it. So those are 2 completely different things. Those are they're not related. Those are from different buildings. So being able to write music, something that AI can already do, and it can do it adequately. Like it can do it as well as a uninspiring human composer.
So this one about you composed for Wu-Tang in space, I guess it doesn't mean that you actually met the Wu-Tang Clan.
Same as the Lorde song. I did not meet the Wu-Tang Clan.
But you wrote and composed music.
Yeah, that was that was a project through my friend Sam Spiegel, who owns a fantastic company called Squeaky Clean that does a lot of really great commercials. And they're like if you look up Squeaky Clean, you'll see a bunch of stuff that you recognize that they've done. And this was a project that he directed. It was one of the first things he directed. And I know him through music. He's a musician. We've known each other since middle school. We've been friends for an embarrassing amount of years. And so he got this, he directed and creative directed this Wu-Tang in Space short, and he wanted me to score it. And we ended up really collaborating on the score because we're so used to doing music together that we just ended up sort of collaborating, even though I was the composer. And yeah, it was a fun project. You can find it on YouTube. It's supposed to be a commercial for Impossible Foods, the fake meat company, but it's really just kind of its own thing. And it was really funny. My parents had a place in Maine where I grew up and spent every summer. And I was there when Sam called me to do this show. And one of the things I used to do in this house in Maine when I was a kid is go to the video store and rent Godzilla movies. And
Oh, wow.
so Sam called me and he said, I've got the show Wu-Tang in Space, and the first cue that I want you to do is this like moon fight in space. And I'm thinking about this obscure movie, and it's like, I think it's Godzilla, and he's fighting like a big moth. I was like, that's Godzilla versus Mothra. And I know, and I think that's actually in the Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla movie. And that Mothra is sort of a junior, I was like, I know exactly the scene. I know exactly the music. And that's what we started with. And then, I wasn't able to work on the rest of it till I got back to Los Angeles. But it was this sort of, sometimes you have these moments with projects where, the client asks for something and exactly, I was like, I know exactly what you want. I know exactly how to do it. And that whole project was like that. It was just like nonstop fun from beginning to end.
I really like that. Now I'm looking at the guitars in the back there. You literally play those guitars?
Yeah. As opposed to like figuratively playing them.
And what guitars for what? Like, for instance, why do you have so many?
So they're all different, right? They all have like a different sound. So like right behind me here, this is a spruce top acoustic guitar. This would be used for like bluegrass or like, folk type. This is just like a typical acoustic guitar. This is bass. So that's, in the bass register. This particular one is a Fender PJ bass, which means it's a hybrid between their precision bass and their jazz bass, which means it has two sets of pickups. The P bass usually only has the one set of pickup, and the jazz bass has the other. So this one is a very versatile bass that was actually left at my house 25 years ago, and now it's mine. I actually saw the person who left it at a wedding recently, and she said, "Hey," I don't know. I said, "Yeah, this bass is. I have this bass," and she goes, "Oh my God, you have my bass?" And I was like, "No, I'm sorry, it's my bass now. After 25 years, it's mine. The storage fees alone would bankrupt you."
Is that brown one a Taylor or
this
Martin?
is an Eastman. Both of these acoustics are Eastmans. I'm endorsed by Eastman, so I have their stuff. I use a lot of their instruments, and I use their instruments because I love them. The endorsement actually was backwards. I saw them at a convention, and I said, "Hey, I already own a bunch of your stuff, and I love playing it. So should we just make this official?" But this one they gave me. This is actually this is a gypsy jazz guitar. This is like for Django Reinhardt style music. It's a pretty specific instrument, but it's a style that I play a lot. And this is actually their prototype of this instrument. So it's pretty cool. It's I don't know if it's hand built, but it's definitely up to a higher standard than a lot of other guitars, than a lot of production guitars, because it's the prototype, and so there was a lot of hands on with it. And you can see there's two mandolins that are hanging up there. I don't know if you can make that out in this video, but one of them, the brown one, is actually a mandola, which means it's a fifth below the mandolin. And then there's a blank space there where my mandolin that is in the shop is currently, or should be. And then this blue mandolin, these are all Eastmans, also needs to go to the shop. It needs to get a new bridge, a new tailpiece. But they're all mandolins. I play those. And then below you can see there's some electric guitars. And I have, 5 or 6 banjos, because I love different kinds of banjos. And we could do a whole other podcast with me just like talking about different kinds of banjos. But I don't want to put your listeners to sleep. But if you're listening and you want to talk about banjos, you just email me. We'll talk about banjos all day.
So what's your creative process like? Like you wake up in the morning and say, "Hey, I got a great idea for a song." You go, and then. So how does that work?
That's pretty much it.
Oh, seriously? Like, is that how your creative process is? It's just suddenly you just toy around and say, "Hey, that's a good riff."
I always quote Cole Porter when he was asked by a reporter, "What is your inspiration to write a song?" And he said, "Usually a phone call from my agent."
This is gonna be a fun podcast. 1,500 views and going up. So who do you have helping you usually? Just yourself, or you have Dan Martinez helping you?
Dan Martinez. Dan Martinez Dan Martinez is a collaborator. He's not a assistant or anything like that. He's got his own show. He scores a show called Shark Dog, which is on, I want to say it's on Nickelodeon. It might be on Netflix. It might be produced by Nickelodeon and on Netflix. But it's a kid's show, and it's awesome, and he does an amazing job with it. And he has a lot of other gigs too, but I think that's been his main thing for a little while. So yeah, Dan and I are peers. So I do have an assistant. I have two assistants. One of them is named Santiago Ramones, who he has a great podcast called Bit Depth also, which is, interesting and fun to listen to. And he helps me mostly with my podcast and with some other stuff, but he's a great musician. And then another guy named Eugenio I'm going to read his full name because I don't want to get it wrong. Another guy named Eugenio Casillas Rodriguez, who is in Mexico, and he helps me with music stuff. He's a great musician in his own right. And we're able to collaborate remotely. I met him on the Pantaya show that I mentioned at the top of the podcast, and he's been really helpful with some of the other projects I've been doing. So yeah, I have and my wife has some people that she calls. We have excuse me, we have a team of orchestrators and copyists that we use when we have to do orchestral sessions. And yeah, they're all friends. I mean, these are all people that, come to barbecues at our house and stuff. Well, not Eugenio and Santiago, because they live in other cities and I've never actually met either of them in person. But the ones that are in LA, we hang out a lot. And yeah, I met my wife at a composer party. These things happen, and it's a bunch of composers and musicians, and we, just go somewhere and drink alcohol and play instruments that we don't necessarily play, and, talk about music. So
that's fun.
Yeah. So that's where I met her and a lot of my now colleagues and friends. That's where I met Dan Martinez. And yeah, we all just, Los Angeles is really like it's a very hanging out type of city, if that makes any, I don't know if that makes sense, but that like really the way you make connections is just by going places and being places and just meeting like-minded people. That's, everybody that I know in Los Angeles, everyone who I know who is a client or a friend or a collaborator or a, contract employee is someone that I met at a party or at a bar or through a friend. And, that's how it always starts.
Who's the most well-known musicians you've met?
I mean, define met, like shook their hands or like, worked with them and know them.
Because this is, and you're like, oh, I love your music. Hey, and like, I don't want to say famous because I don't want people to think that.
Can I just leave this question as like, I don't want to name drop, but like all of them. I mean, I know many very famous musicians who, we know each other on a first name basis. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? Like, sure. I can think, so you met like Josh Groban or Billy Joel.
I told you, I don't want to name drop. I will tell you, I have never met either Josh Groban or Billy Joel, but yeah, I know a lot of really great musicians and I think, pretty much every any composer whose name you could summon as just a normal person, which is not many, I've probably met them, because it's a small community.
Amazing, my friend. Yeah. Anybody else in your family, beside your wife, of course, like siblings or family members who are into music and like to do what you do?
Yes, all of my siblings and also my wife are professional musicians. So my wife is a composer. I don't know when this is going to come out, but my wife scores The Cleaning Lady on Fox, which is premiering on Monday the 19th, which is...
Yeah. Wow, she wrote that score?
Yep, so she writes that. There's a new...
Tell her she's awesome.
Yeah, she's writing season 2 in this very room where I'm sitting right now. So season 2 premieres on the 19th of September, which is Monday, or when this comes out, whatever, maybe it was last Monday, but, so she's fantastic. My sister, Isla Cantor Santiago, is an amazing guitar player. I can admit now with the confidence of age that she is a way better guitar player than I am. That was hard for me to say when I was in my 20s and we were really competitive, but she's absolutely incredible. And she lives in Oregon and does a lot of stuff on the internet and does a lot of teaching, which if you can take some lessons with her or through her company, if you want to get good at guitar and you're serious about it, that's the best way, period. You just study with her. My older sister, Sarah Cantor, is a recorder player. So she plays Baroque recorder. She plays in early music ensembles. She plays all the authentic Baroque music. She plays every recorder, which means, when you think of the recorder, you think of middle school, and that is a soprano recorder. There is a recorder for every clef and beyond. There are contrabass recorders that are, 10 feet tall. There are tiny, tiny little recorders that are this big, and there are bass recorders, and she plays all of them. And she is hands down the most skilled musician that I've ever met. I mean, she can read in any clef. She can read anything authentically. She can play this music from 400 years ago. Like, I mean, she's just got it in her soul, and it's really an amazing thing to behold. So yeah, so everyone in my family they're all musicians. Neither of my parents are musicians. I don't know how, excuse me, hold on. I don't know how this happened, but neither of my parents are musicians, but all the kids are musicians.
Because I've seen some really wonderful people playing the recorder. Are you familiar with Michaela Petri?
I don't think so.
She's also a player, and Ernst Kummer is like James Galway as a flute player.
Are you a recorder fan?
I'm a big recorder fan because I was learning to play the recorder actually, but you're right, it was the soprano recorder, but I want the large blue recorders that you
Sure. Hey, my sister Sarah does virtual lessons, I think. So you should hit her up. Sarah Cantor. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I want to take lessons actually. Hit me up. I just want to know what she charges.
I'm sure she can explain that to you. But whatever she charges, she's worth it.
Whatever. What do you do when you're not doing music? Do you have anything that you do just to relax?
Well, I have a podcast, which I mentioned, Book Society, which is, you can find it wherever you find podcasts. And I'm working on a book, which I also mentioned. Neither of those things are things that I do to relax. I have 2 kids, so I play with them a lot. Obviously, sometimes raising kids, but it's, I knew what it was going into it. And I would say I unreservedly enjoy every moment I spend with them, even the moments that are frustrating. So I'm lucky that our schedule allows me to spend at least 3 or 4 hours a day with them, which is awesome. As soon as I get off with you, as soon as I get off the phone with you, I'm going to go play with them for the rest of the morning, and then they're going to have a nap, and then we're going to go to a birthday party. And on a normal day, I work until about 3, and then I watch them until bedtime. So yeah, it's great. So that's a thing I do for fun. I also like to go on bike rides, and I run. So, but yeah, I've never really my wife jokes when we met, my wife joked with me that she said, you don't seem to have hobbies because you end up going pro with your hobbies. And yeah, that's sort of what, I don't know. I envy people who have a thing that they do that they just enjoy doing, and they're not necessarily trying to master it. They just do it because it gives them some sort of zen. But I guess my hobbies are all these different instruments that you see behind me. I'm better at some of them than others. I think I'm professionally proficient at all of them, but some of them I'm okay, and some of them I think I've mastered guitar to some degree, but I'm good at mandolin, but I'm not great at it. So that's kind of a hobby of mine, is just playing it, playing through some repertoire and trying to get better at it. And some of these instruments have no real purpose. I mean, I've never actually had a gig that required me to play a tenor banjo, but I really enjoy playing it. And so I suppose I would call those hobbies.
That's cool. Yeah. Do you have any pets, like a dog?
I have 2 dogs.
Cat? What kind of dogs?
One is a terrier Chihuahua mix, and one is a pug and poodle mix.
Yep. Oh, cool. Yep. So so this one is, who's your favorite, who do you have playing in your Spotify list? Who do you like listening to?
I've been listening to a lot of Tchaikovsky recently, and it's pretty eclectic. I periodically listen to Bobby McFerrin. I just love everything he does. I mean, worry. I don't think he is. Be happy. Well, so that song is fantastic. And another thing that song is on an album called Simple Pleasures, which came out in, I think 1989, maybe 1987. And it holds up. I mean, it could have come out today. It is just so unique and different and beautiful, and it's timeless. I think that album is an accomplishment, and I love it. And Bobby McFerrin's also an amazing classical conductor and an amazing classical performer. He has a great record called Paper Music, which I listen to a lot, which is him conducting some of his favorite pieces and also singing the soloist parts in several concertos. And on that album, he does a Bach violin concerto, and a Paganini cello concerto. So for those of you who are musically literate, that's a pretty big range for a vocalist to go from, low C to like, I mean, it's almost the entire piano. I think it's 6 octaves or something that he is comfortable singing in, and with a beautiful tone and sonority. So I love Bobby McFerrin. I listen to a lot of my friends' music. And I have a playlist on Spotify. I think it's called like Best of Friends, which is literally just all music that my friends made. A friend of mine named Jordan Siegel has an album called Beyond Images, and he's a film composer, but also an incredible jazz pianist. And he made this album that is like, I described Dan Martinez as annoyingly good, and Jordan is also annoyingly good. It's like one of these albums that like, I like wish I wrote it. It's so good. And a lot of my friends are playing on it, and it's just beautiful. And the way he produced it and the way he wrote it is it's just fantastic. Yeah.
That's amazing, my friend. Yeah. So you don't like any of the like, it's listen Britney Spears or things like Imagine Dragons or bands like that?
I love Pink Floyd. There's going to be a chapter in my book about Pink Floyd. I've seen Pink Floyd in concert. I could probably play through Dark Side of the Moon on the guitar. Like if tomorrow morning, if I was transported to the stage and had to like get through Dark Side of the Moon, I could probably do it. I love that. I love that music. And I've loved it for decades. But yeah, asking me you asked me what's on my Spotify playlist right now, and that's what I've listened to in the last, 2 weeks. But I mean, it goes back and forth. I love Michael Jackson, and the stuff he did with Quincy Jones and just, everything that he did. I love Stevie Wonder. There's, whatever. I mean, I like pretty much anything. Pretty much anything. Like any music is good. There's so much music on Spotify. There's something like 700 million tracks on Spotify. So I'm abbreviating, but there's so much music on Spotify that if you tried to listen to all of it, it would take you 500 years. And if they were adding music at the rate that they're currently adding music, by the time you would listen to all of it, you would have only heard something like 1% of what would be on there at that time. What that means is that no matter how much music you listen to and no matter how much you love music, there's a song out there that you would absolutely love that you will not hear in your lifetime. There's a song that you will die before you hear that you would have absolutely loved.
Well, I know there's a lot of great classical music out there, but I have one called Chris's Greatest Classical Hits, which is my favorite classical music that I just love. And then I have Evanescence, and I created my own playlist with the songs I like from them. Trying to get Amy Lee on the podcast, but that's probably going to be an impossibility. And then there's a few like Sarah Brightman, Andrew Lloyd Webber, and Beth Nielsen Chapman. Just people I'm discovering that I knew about for years, but I just discovered that they have some great music, and I put them all together. So I put all the great stuff together. Like I never liked Celine Dion, so there was one song I like, and then over time there was other songs.
Which one is the one you like?
That's What It Takes. Yeah. Bring Me to Life. So I put them all in one list, like 15, 20 of my favorites. And I say I like Celine Dion, but I don't like a lot of others. So that's how I do it. I just add on to it. So I like that type of stuff. But I listen to a lot of classical. So I got to look at the Bobby McFerrin.
Yeah, Simple Pleasures. It's the album that Don't Worry, Be Happy is on. It's great. Bring this back. Bobby McFerrin is a devout Christian. And he like sings songs about Christianity. Oh yeah, he's got an album of Psalms, I think. Yeah, no joke. Yep.
Thank you very much, Lucas. I'm so sorry for making you late.
No problem. Hey, you know what? I can hear the kids. Should we just bring them in? Hey, boys, you want to be on a podcast? Come on. Okay, here. Tell us about yourself, Jude. This is Jude.
Hi.
This is
what's
Jude.
Your name?
Oh, I can't hear you. Hey, Jude, what's your name? Can you tell him your name?
I am your truck Dan.
Your mail truck Dan. Okay. And what about this guy? This is Coltrane. Hey, Coltrane, can you tell them your name?
Coltrane is his name?
What's your name?
After the famous musician? Wow.
Mookie.
Hi, Coltrane.
Mookie? Oh, he's Mookie Betts today. And then this is Mookie my wife, Allison. Chris is a cleaning lady fan.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
It's
awesome. You will enjoy the next season. It's a lot of fun.
Love your work. Wow, that's amazing.
Cool. All right. Well, all right. Thanks, Chris. Okay, we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.